In this webinar, we will consider the changes that we're seeing in the software market and the technology landscape overall, and that this is creating challenges for ISVs and for enterprise software, but also that it's creating opportunities to deliver new value and perhaps surprising ways. But before we get going, maybe real quick, just to introduce ourselves. My name is Sean Devlin, and current Servoy customers may recognize me because I run a lot of these webinars for a more technical audience for the community. But today I'm pleased because I'm joined by our CEO, Ron Vandenberg. Ron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good to be here to finally talk to our tech crowd also a little bit, but good to be here to talk a little bit more about the business end of these technical solutions. So great to be here. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you because yeah, it takes pressure off me a bit, a little bit more fun for me.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Well, maybe real quick, let's look at the agenda, not only for today, but for this three-part webinar mini-series. And we chose this topic because we've been seeing this becoming a more dominant factor in integrations, becoming a factor for organizations that we work with. And we're happy to have some exciting announcements for new offerings from Servoy that we want to address it. Now, in the other technical webinars, I typically go right to a demo first. That's my rule. And so today it's really hard for me not to do a demo as a first order of business in these webinars. But I think it's important that we kind of set the stage and make the business case first, because I believe this topic is as much strategic as it is, technology focused. So over the next 2 weeks, we will do that deeper look. We'll meet some guest speakers and investigate the technical side of this topic. So there will be time for that. But today we'll go pretty quick and just kind of make the business case and talk about the why before we get into the what. At Servoy, we work with a lot of ISVs and enterprise application developers. For us, it's kind of clear to see that the landscape is definitely changing. And Ron, when we're talking about integrations, I'm curious, what do you see changing from a business perspective?
Well, to maybe start a little bit more high level, I think what we're seeing, and I presume that our audience is also seeing that, is that I think the competition is pretty fierce. Everybody's trying to get all those customers and become the next best thing, and there's many new things coming along, and it's really competitive. Maybe the most competitive thing today is that there's all these point solutions that only focus on one thing and try to be the best in class there and win their customers on UX. It's a pretty competitive landscape. It's hard to distinguish yourselves when there is a point solution which focuses on only one small thing of what you do. I think a good example is Salesforce, that took away a lot of business away from SAP, for instance, right? And there's many other like that, like Pipedrive, Workday, Jira. The list is endless, and I think it's a pretty competitive landscape. Yeah, and I think that's puts a big pressure on the market. I think another thing is that what I see happening is, and I'm not really sure where this comes from, but end customers and also corporates, they now go for a best of breed landscape. They want to choose those solutions that fit well for their purpose, and rather maybe even use half of an ERP package and other half of something else, because those halves fit perfectly, right? Yeah. And I think many years ago, it was fine to say, yeah, I'm going to tailor my organization to the software. I think today that's not done anymore at all. And like I said, it's driven from various things, but maybe even driven from those point solutions, which are so easy to engage with. Right. It's like a click, try, buy, and then suddenly you have Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
So that's the marketplace is really changing, or it has changed actually. I think with that comes that if you're more a traditional ISV or have been around for a while, that keeping differentiated is very difficult.
Yeah, I see, Ron. I see this with the customers, Servoy customers that I work with that are modernizing their offerings of their legacy core systems, and they have different needs from existing customers that they have versus new sales that they're trying to generate. And they're forced to make these strategic choices about in their modernization effort about which components or modules do they bring along to to the newer version, and which components do they maybe leave and offer integrations instead. That it's a strategic challenge. It's not just a technical one.
Well, I think everybody knows is to stay differentiated. You need to innovate, right? But then the next question is, now we are innovative. What direction are we going to go in?
Right.
And maybe I think typical ISVs are pretty vertically organized or oriented, but going more vertical will typically also limit your market, right? And because not one size fits all.
Yeah.
I think so. What you see also happening is they almost serve as like a palette of verticalized prone solutions, and of course that together is one package, but they are opening up to deliver the value to their customers that they need, and with that also comes that they are more and more partnering. I think it's a thing that's happening today.
But maybe can you talk about why you think this kind of change is happening and what's driving it, and what are the kind of ingredients for it?
Well, I think a big driver is of course cloud, and I think the biggest reason for people moving or wanting stuff from the cloud is I think the big thing there is ease of use. It's easy to use something in a browser. It's easy to buy something. It's I don't have to worry about it. And of course, there's a lot of boring things there, like cost and security and availability and scalability. But I think that's all boring. I think it's all about ease of use, right? And fit for purpose. And like I said before, it's so easy to buy a point solution that's really really driving things. So yeah. I think it also brings you a challenge maybe for cloud and on-prem. It also puts pressure on the typically monolithic approach of many ISVs. Like I said before, they're moving towards a palette of things rather than one big thing. And that's driven by cloud, and that's driven by point solutions and by click, try, buy, and parts being on-prem and parts being in the cloud. And I think the big picture is that things become more and more scattered.
Yeah. Can you talk about? I've heard the word thrown around by analysts before, systems of engagement, and how that plays into this.
Well, that's a big driver for many companies, that in order to distinguish yourselves from your competition, you need something different than your competition. So today's offering of many companies is not just a bricks and mortar company, but let's say the software and the digital engagement with your customer is maybe where they see you, right? Maybe you deliver bricks, but they order the bricks through a portal, and that portal is really who you are or who you are perceived as being. And those are systems of engagement, and those are typically not off the shelf, because something off the shelf is the same as your competitor, right?
Yeah.
And those system of engagements are on the customer end, so typically sales portals, ordering systems.
Yeah.
Those should drive things like value and top line growth. But you see a lot of also system of engagement more on back end things, like with employees. Nobody wants to show their employees difficult systems which they're not happy with, right? Having empowered and happy people is really important for companies. And same goes for suppliers. You see a lot of supply chains being compromised, or how do you say that, compacted, and they need to be transparent and operational excellent. And so on the supplier end, there's also things like portals and integrations happening, because that's an added value. It saves money, of course, if you don't have to retype a fax into an ERP. But it needs to be on time and transparent and accurate. And that's why you see a lot of pressure on ERP systems where they need to integrate again on the front end with, let's say, system engagement towards customers, with employees. You need things which are really nice to work with, and with suppliers you need some stuff which is fast and accurate and transparent.
Yeah, I've seen this over the past few years, especially working with Servoice customers who have comprehensive ERP packages, that they were migrating from legacy core systems and modernizing, and just looking at the way they chose to modernize, that they knew they had to update their core system, their core modules, but that's not where they started. They started with a lot of like a suite of really small mobile applications that kind of fit together in a package suite, and gave those first to their customers because it helped. It added net new value to existing customers, because if you're an ISV and you're modernizing your overall architecture, and it could be a multi-year effort, it doesn't create really new value. Maybe some nicer UX, or you get to in a browser or something for existing customers. It's not compelling, and so they did both at the same time. They began the work of modernizing their core system, knowing that they needed to also give something to existing customers, and they began with these small systems of engagement that integrate with the legacy system, and they took that sort of parallel strategy.
Right.
And the reason I brought that up is that it's a strategic decision. It's not just about technology. It's about existing customers and new sales opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with. So I think what they did there, I think their dominant strategy was, we want to focus first on these things which add value quick, right? And in which I can enlighten my customers. But I think that goes hand in with integration, right? If you want to see integration as a USP almost, that's like a strategy, right? It's rather than trying to stay up, right, and cope with it almost. That people in the landscape of your customers keep asking for integrations. You could turn that around and start selling it as USP, because people want this, and I think everybody knows that your system is never alone. Big ERPs have 50 to 100 or even more integrations, and because customers want that. And I think the old school way to approach is to say, I'm trying to be a castle and dig a sloth, I think, around it. That's the right word.
A moat in English.
A moat around it, a moat around it. Trying to open up, right, and say, here I am, and please integrate, and because I know you want to choose. I think that's the way forward. Yeah.
Well, maybe it helps for us to take a step back and to look at some real world examples where this happens. And I want to start with something that everyone knows. I think most people have heard of Slack, and I've seen many of our customers adopt Slack. And the reason I bring this up is that a few years ago, Slack really became the dominant chat app. For a while, people were using all the different kinds of stuff. I remember Yammer and
Chatter.
Yeah, they seem like dinosaurs now, but it wasn't that long ago. And I remember listening to a podcast with the CEO of Slack was on there, and he was talking about how this was their single focus was to be I think he wanted to kill email and to sort of really replace the way people engage with each other, but then take it to the next level. And so what they did is they not only offered, I think, literally thousands of integrations eventually, but even a platform where developers and really not really hardcore developers, but where people could set up their own integrations, and then even a marketplace where they could share those integrations with the community. And it completely changed the way people thought of what a chat application should be. And in the process, they dominated the market for a few years. I think now that they're starting to compete with Microsoft Teams and such. But for a while, they were alone in the fact that you could build I made a pilot project last year doing like an approval process via Slack, where something happens inside a core system, but you engage with an approval manager wherever, in whatever they're using. In this case, it's Slack, and it pops up a message, and they want to approve or deny or something right there in the chat app. And I thought that's a compelling example because I think everyone can relate to it. But I think it also maybe makes sense to look at some of the kinds of organizations that we work with, and I think that are more in target with our audience in this webinar. So Ron, maybe can you talk about STB and who they are and what they've done with integrations?
Yeah, well, I think this is a company that most of our community knows, and there's probably people in the audience that don't know them. It's a company, a long-time customer of Savoy. They're in our latest version of the technology stack, have a modernized application. They target a couple of markets. One is healthcare. They are in organizations which sell training and trainers and locations, and also more in a wholesale trading. I think one of the things which they did a couple of years ago, they started, they had a strategy, yeah, we need to open up our API. So they had an API first strategy. I think they did that together with modernizing to the latest front-end technology of Savoy. But then they saw that having an API is not enough. I think you can use their whole application almost through the API.
The API was the beginning, not the end.
It was the beginning, but then they say, yeah, but we are the ones that need to give our customers a delightful user journey, and that's not just by giving them an API, right? Because a user journey might start in their ERP, right, and might end in Slack, right, or might start in Slack and stay in Slack. But the whole journey is not just about the API, but you need to really think about integrations, and leaving those integrations to third parties or the point solution didn't work. So they needed to also go a big step beyond that. And then what they also found out, you cannot create and manage integrations one by one and achieve the required quality. It's just not possible because it takes too much time and to not only build them but deploy them and keep them deployed and keep them stable. So they really see integrations as a strategic part of their offering.
I wanted to ask you about Globus because I know that they kind of took this topic really to the next level. What they did.
Right.
Can you talk about who this company is and what they did that was kind of beyond the realm of your normal set of integrations?
So Globus is a company who has an offering which targets the transport industry. They provide a multimodal transport solution. So it handles every form of transport: trucks, trains, planes, ships, everything, bulk, containers. And their market are the larger transport companies, and their ERP is quite extensive. And what they saw is that especially in supply chains, the chain is very, very scattered. extremely scattered because there are many people who touch something when it comes from China to Europe or from Philippines to wherever, right? Many companies or people touch that, very scattered. It's very dynamic. It moves all the time. Their ERP integrates also in their customers with many other systems, typically financial systems, for instance. And so they saw two things, that a lot of the effort to implement the software, and this really amazed me. Karel, the owner of the company, told me yesterday, I asked him for this quote. He said 50% of the budget of an implementation project is integrations. 50%. Can you imagine that? And this is a standard ERP, huh?
Yeah.
It causes many delays and headaches.
Yeah.
And what I also saw, and that's maybe nice about them, they put an integration platform as a service inside their ERP because they said we are the ones that are breaking the innovation or putting the brakes on the innovation. So we need to empower our customers or our implementation partners. They work with implementation partners, big ones. We need to empower them without any coding to make or to maintain integrations, because it's such a big thing in this industry. And so for them, integration is a really big USP.
So just to clarify, so they actually open up integration platform here, so end users or implementation partners can customize the integration for every implementation that they have. It's not
exactly.
Yeah.
Build them and customize them and deploy them.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, this is a very quick changing world. So if one of their customers decides to have another freight forwarder work with them or another warehouse, whatever, then you need a new integration.
Right.
And you want that fast. So and I recognize that in the transport industry.
It's a next level approach.
Yeah.
I know Reflecta does something somewhat similar. Can you talk about their business, though, who they are and what kind of ISV they are?
So Reflecta is a company that is focused on the fashion retail industry, or fashion wholesale, actually. Again, of course, this is pretty much, or a lot of this is about logistics and transport. Also very scattered. They focus only on this industry, and I think they have two really big types of integrations. One of the biggest, I think, for them is that they chose to stay on a more legacy backend built on Progress, and put a Ceravoy front end on top of that. That's a big integration right there. They
and by that you mean that they're reusing a lot of their core system, so like existing business logic and.
Well, actually, everything is still in their core system in legacy, and Ceravoy is more like the front end processor of this.
Okay.
And that's a choice because they also want to be more agile, so be able to modernize parts and keep other parts still in the legacy. And they chose to do that as a strategy. But I think the other part of this is that integrations for them is so essential that, for instance, for working with on-premise hardware, stuff like that, like scales to weigh stuff, or forklifts, or doors which open up and stuff, right? And that's also integration right there. And also, of course, their software lands in the landscape of best of breed solutions.
Right.
They typically don't deliver accounting systems and HR systems, and right. So they integrate on many levels and many forms.
Yeah, I know. I was talking at Ceravoy World last year with one of their lead developers, and in this effort, I know they have to do a lot of mapping. They map payloads from these different flows and have to kind of twist the data. And sometimes it's simple, but it can get very messy. This is actually a screenshot of the configuration of some of these mappings. And I think what's interesting about their approach, it's kind of like Clovis, where they don't spend developer hours on this. They instead use a integration platform as a service to deliver that, and it gives them not only greater productivity but the stability and maintainability of these implementations for their customers is enhanced as well.
Right. Yeah, I think for them, what's really cool about this is that, of course, they deliver integrations as part of the implementation. And with the implementation, they typically build the first many integrations. But because that's so successful, their customers keep coming back for more. It's like, you get people addicted on integrations. And that goes hand in hand with great user experience, of course, right? For them, delivering a really seamless experience to their ERP users is key. And seamless means not being seamless just in your ERP, but also in everything outside of it, and really think more in the journey of a user. What will he see and what will he use and how does that feel? So yeah, for them this is really key.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about now how some ISVs are turning, the changes in the marketplace and opportunities in the technology landscape into real value for their customers. Ron, can you kind of summarize that into a few points about how what's a recipe for that? How does that look like?
Well, of course, you can look at this more from a defensive way, right? And now I have to break up my application. But if you turn it around, I think you can, if you're embracing this, you can start seeing that people are people, right? And people like to pick and choose because they want something that really, really fits well. And if they have something that fits very well, they'll like you, and you're going to be more lovable. And I think that's the most important thing about the product we all sell, right? So I think, of course, that will lead to less churn and less attrition. But I think what's behind really that is that if you're more lovable, more valuable, then because you fit so well on what they use, I think you can even get people to no longer talk about price, right? Or I think probably most ISVs have discussions about price and that the price needs to go down because there's competition, right? But if something fits very, very well, only if somebody uses 2 or 3 modules of your complete ERP, which may have maybe 12 modules, if those 3 are only used, but people are really, really happy with that, I think there's no real discussion about price anymore because the value is so connected to something somebody likes, right? And so you can turn it around by, like I said, like trying to keep somebody gated in your total ecospace and they feel locked in. If you open up but make them love you, it's a completely different feeling. And I think the market forces everybody to do this. But if you keep on breaking, right, rather than embracing, I think the way to go forward is to embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe last but not least is that this also, of course, goes hand in hand with relevance.
I think that the example I gave before with the approval workflow via Slack or something.
Exactly.
You expand your relevance into the areas where they're not even using your application, but they're meeting you on their own tools.
Right.
So if they're using Slack already and you engage them in Slack, then they're using your app even when they're not, I guess is what I want to say. And and that way you're always there. You're always there.
How great is that?
Yeah.
Right. And rather than I feel so sad that they don't use my internal chat application, right?
Right.
If they're happy, they're happy, right? And I think that's what we have to embrace all, rather than seeing it as something that comes head on. But maybe to you then, Sean. why do you think that a lot of ISVs are behind on integrations or embracing it? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I work directly with a lot of our customers who are facing this, and it's connecting to services, APIs. They've made things a lot easier, but that's kind of the beginning, and there's a lot that happens. You saw the slide a few slides ago, that the crazy looking mapping diagram for Reflecta is a good example. You have maybe you're connecting to two accounting systems and they return data with different column names in different formats, but you need to blend it into the same thing. I think anyone who's worked with a web service, maybe they're used to getting dates in a string with or without a time zone. You have to make sure that that all maps together correctly.
Mm-hmm.
When developers build point-to-point integrations themselves, one thing to consider is that you now own that code for the lifetime of the application. So this means that if another version of the API comes out or something is deprecated, you have to adapt to that. If there's a competitor that you want to switch to, your code is no longer relevant. And of course, just like regular software, you have to test and fix issues related to integrations as well as normal software long after the initial implementation is done. So the total cost of ownership is something you have to consider. Mm-hmm. And connections are not limited just to regular cloud service providers. There's often on-premise deployments. I think at the beginning of the presentation, Ron, you were talking about the pressure on ISVs to have a cloud offering, but also to satisfy their customers reluctant to leave the cloud. So you need to deliver integrations to both of those environments and configure them individually. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, like in the case of Reflecta, you mentioned, this can include hardware. So we're now talking about IoT connections, which could be sending data to the cloud or to on-premise appliances and machines, or both. So it's not just a kind of two-way street. It's much more messy than that.
Right.
Now, if you've ever worked with a poorly documented API, I don't need to say any more.
Yeah.
But building the code to connect to something is one thing, but keeping it running in production is quite another, because I think just like regular software development, we focus a lot on building, on implementing a feature. And then once we put that into production, it's a whole other challenge. You got with integrations, you maybe want to track, meter your calls. You need to see log data. You want to know if certain calls are failing. Can you retry failed calls? Should you retry for a while and then do something? These kinds of questions, you don't start thinking of them when you're building the integration, but when you start really testing it and running it, then it becomes clear. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever built an authorization flow, you know that this can start off easy, but then become more challenging as you go. You have to deal with tokens. Maybe you're saving credentials and tokens, refreshing tokens, etc. It's nice to not have to worry about that if you don't have to. When you have to think about optimizing performance. You can only perform as fast as the service that you're maybe connecting to. And then maybe you have to consider things like caching. What about API services that require throttling? How do you deal with that? Paging, etc. So it does get tricky. Mm-hmm. I know that there are some service integrations that route data through their own cloud. And this can create issues around compliance if you need to deal with the GDPR or you're sending, in North America, we have a HIPAA compliancy for healthcare patient data. You need to be mindful of what routes that data takes when it's in transit. Yeah, and like you said at the beginning, Ron, don't forget about legacy systems. That in and of itself can be an integration that you have to consider.
Yeah. So, what's cool about legacy, Sean? What's cool about legacy is that integration today still is sometimes about picking up an FTP file from an FTP server and parsing it, and right.
I've seen that before. Yeah.
Well, I've seen before. We delivered a system ourselves 2 weeks ago, which does that.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I think legacy is here to stay. I would almost say.
Pick up and drop off integration.
Yeah, and I think if you're an ISV trying to deliver solutions, that this is, I think, their day-to-day struggle.
Right. Well, Ron, maybe I should turn this around back to you then. Mm-hmm. Since you've made the business case and I talked about the challenges, you're mm-hmm. the CEO of Servoy. What are we going to do about this?
Well, it was always Servoy's mission to remove the burdens of building and delivering business applications. So, and I think this is for many ISVs and also corporate developers, I think maybe sometimes even bigger, a big burden. Integration is becoming more and more important, I think, with these scattered landscapes, mm-hmm. scattered in terms of solutions, scattered in terms of infrastructure, on-prem, cloud. It's becoming more and more scattered, it seems. And we know why. We talked about why. So therefore, we decided to pursue a partnership with two companies. So yeah, we talk about integration and orchestrating. One of the partners is CData. We did a webinar with them, I think somewhere in March. Mm-hmm. They deliver really, really nice integrations with many ERPs, financial systems, but even things which are like Stripe and many integrations.
E-commerce and then technology platforms too, like AWS.
And with this integration, the integration makes it so simple and so feels so native to Servoy that it's really, really valuable, I think. And I think mm-hmm. the whole audience and everybody in the Servoy community needs to hear about this. Mm-hmm. So next week, we're going to do a webinar just with CData, mm-hmm. our new partner, where we'll also talk about pricing, and Sean will do a great demo. We're working on we're working on a case with one or two customers. I saw one of our customers is in the audience, so that's good. I'm really excited about this, like I said, because it feels so native to Servoy, and it's. Mm-hmm. I could build this, I think. Well, maybe not. Okay. So that's one, and I think the other one is an integration platform as a service, a partnership we have with Connect Plaza. So both these we OEM, we sell them at a really nice pricing level through Servoy. Mm-hmm. What this iPaaS is more about orchestrating connections. It's a no-code environment in which you can do the data mapping, create these connectors, deploy them in cloud or on-prem. What's really nice about this is that this technology can be used, for instance, to talk to on-prem hardware, like a scale. Mm-hmm. And what's also nice that this platform helps you to monitor and analyze what's happening. Again, it feels very natural for us to work with a company like this. It fits very well to what we do, really trying to unburden people developing these complex solutions.
Cool. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for their attention to this webinar, and I hope that that what you have seen is compelling, and you'll join us in the coming weeks for the follow-up webinars. And I'd like to also thank you, Ron, for participating. Again, this is recorded, so if you need to rewatch any of this, we will be posting this later today and sharing the links to that. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next Wednesday at the exact same time, and we'll be sending out reminders for that.
Thank you for joining.